From Crete, we now turn to the Greek mainland. Greece had been settled as early as 6000 BCE, and there were even relatively advanced Neolithic communities in the region. However, those early populations are not our concern here. Instead, we begin with the first Bronze Age Greek culture that possessed a written language, the Mycenaeans. The Mycenaeans take their name from the city of Mycenae, the first major site of this civilization to be identified by archaeologists. Mycenae was excavated in 1876 by Heinrich Schliemann. Schliemann was the son of a Protestant minister and had various careers early in life, including working as a grocer and a cabin boy. He eventually made a fortune in international trade and, beginning in 1871, devoted himself to the pursuit of his childhood dream, locating the cities described in Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. Using Homer as a guide, Schliemann identified multiple important Bronze Age sites. Most famously, he discovered Troy, or rather, the remains of 9 successive cities built on the same site. After disputes with Turkish authorities, Schliemann shifted his focus to Greece, where he uncovered several fortified palaces, including Mycenae, which gave its name to the Mycenaean Bronze Age. Mycenae was built on a hilltop and was continuously occupied from roughly 2000 to 1200 BCE. It consisted of massive fortification walls, a large palace complex, and several smaller buildings inside the walls. Unlike Knossos on Crete, Mycenae was not a true city. Most of the population lived in nearby agricultural villages and worked the surrounding land. The purpose of the citadel was to house and protect the king, known as the wanax, along with his administrators, craftsmen, and soldiers. Mycenae was therefore a heavily fortified center of political power, not a commercial or residential hub. Adjacent to the citadel was a cemetery in which archaeologists discovered many rich grave goods, including gold artifacts, weapons, and pottery, early clues to the nature of Mycenaean society. There were several Mycenaean city-states across the Greek mainland. Each served as the administrative center for a sizable territory, larger in fact than most city-states of later classical Greece. Each was ruled by a wanax, supported by a complex hierarchy of officials who oversaw land, taxation, military organization, and religious activity. Most early archaeological evidence consisted of ruined buildings and grave goods. However, in 1939, excavations at another major Mycenaean site, Pylos, in southwestern Greece, produced a remarkable discovery: approximately 600 complete clay tablets. Under normal circumstances, Mycenaean scribes wrote on damp clay tablets and then recycled them by returning the clay to water, essentially erasing the record. When the palace at Pylos was destroyed by fire around 1200 BCE, the heat baked these tablets into hardened ceramic, accidentally preserving them for archaeologists. These tablets were written in a script later called Linear B. Fragments had been found elsewhere, but the large number of intact tablets from Pylos made decipherment possible. In 1953, scholars successfully deciphered Linear B and discovered that it recorded an early form of Greek. Unlike Linear A, used by the Minoans and still undeciphered, Linear B fundamentally transformed our understanding of Mycenaean society. The Linear B tablets are almost entirely economic and administrative records. They list landholdings, tribute, goods stored in palace magazines, and livestock counts. From these records, we know that Mycenaean Greece lacked a unified central government. Each palace was the seat of an independent ruler. The term wanax itself is revealing. In classical Greek, it survives as a poetic term used primarily for gods, suggesting that the Mycenaean king was regarded as divine or semi-divine, or at least appointed by the gods. The tablets show that the wanax exercised control over both religious and economic life, collecting tribute from large territories, larger than any polis would control in the later classical period. This pattern should sound familiar. Like earlier Near Eastern civilizations, the Mycenaeans had a divine or divinely sanctioned ruler, a centralized palace economy, a small ruling elite supported by administrators and soldiers. The resemblance is not accidental. The Mycenaeans were active sailors and traders and had extensive contact with the civilizations of the Near East. Archaeological evidence shows trade with the Hittites, Canaanites, and especially Egypt. Many of their ideas about kingship and administration clearly reflect Near Eastern models, even though Mycenaean religion, art, and social customs retained distinct local features. Both archaeological and written evidence reveal a sharply stratified society. A small elite ruled over a large population. Grave goods make this especially clear. A few Mycenaean families were buried in large, stone-lined tombs filled with gold and luxury objects, while most people were buried simply, with few possessions. Mycenaean civilization flourished for nearly 8 centuries, but around 1200 BCE, it collapsed. New settlement and burial patterns appear, suggesting disruption and population movement. Bronze tools were gradually replaced by early and relatively poor quality iron technology. This collapse was part of a larger phenomenon affecting the entire eastern Mediterranean, often called the Catastrophe of 1200 BCE. Whatever the causes, the consequences in Greece were dramatic and total. Linear B writing disappeared and would not reappear for over 400 years. Palaces and fortresses were abandoned. Large construction projects ceased. Written law, centralized administration, and luxury production vanished. This period, roughly 1200 to 800 BCE, is commonly called the Greek Dark Age because we lack written evidence of the period. In time, Greece would recover and eventually transform the ancient world, but before we can understand classical Greece, we must first examine the geography of the Aegean and how it shaped Greek civilization from the beginning.